Hi everyone, it's Eero here, and in this video we're going to take a look at training of the shoulders. So we're going to do many shoulder kind of isolation exercises, different type of raises. And the thing here is that, for example, I learned a very big lesson about isolation exercises, about like function of the muscles by doing shoulder raises. And this was because in the past I had I pretty much overlooked almost all isolation exercises to great extent. I thought that they're useless or compound exercises are enough and so on, and especially for the shoulders. The reason was that I had quite good size in my shoulders. They were like really the only part in my body that really like stand out, like almost. So I was like, I don't need to do shoulder raises to train them, right? And I was pretty strong in, for example, overhead pressing and so on and so on. But the thing is that for example, this raise, it's completely different. Front raise, all of these are very different from, for example, overhead pressing. Like I even read from some article that the shoulder is kind of like divided in 7 different sectors. All of those have their own sort of functions, and there's probably even more. So my mistake was not to do the exercises at all. And when because when I had I think I had sort of like an AC on the AC joint, there was like irritation, some pain. I think actually during that time I developed that like raising the shoulder that some of you been commenting on my videos. And I had like tightness around the neck, some trapezius area, and pain on the tendon area. So I started to like look for those answers in my training, what to do, and I still overlooked all those because I still thought that they were useless. I focused a lot on like external rotation, for example. But even then, I didn't really know how to like do them so that they would be very effective. I used a lot of my scapula instead of the shoulder, for example. So I didn't do shoulder raises at all, but the mistake that I often see people doing when they do the shoulder raises is they use so much their body and the scapulas, the trapezius, the shrugging to get their arms up, that their shoulders are never going to really activate it fully. Even if they get a shoulder pump, it still doesn't mean that they fully work their shoulders. It's especially the mobility, because when, if I swing here, the first thing is this tension that is here in the very beginning, it's completely off, there's no tension there. Then when we go to this end range, we talk about like peak contraction, which is like the mobility when the muscle is short, that's off as well, because you don't hold it here, it just goes there, and then you kind of drop it down and you continue the movement and you shrug and shrug and shrug. So the point is here that you're not going to fully work your shoulder by this. And like I said, even if you have relatively big shoulders, still doesn't mean that they're very balanced musculature there or they're functioning. When I started practicing this, I could like barely even do it properly, and it actually did hurt a bit. So I started just practicing this movement without weight, getting used to it. I used no weights at all, and I get like a huge burn on the shoulder area. I didn't even count the repetitions. I think it was under 20, maybe around 20, but I just did them until I felt the muscle started to burn over there. So if you do right now, you have like shoulder problem, maybe there's a pinching or something, so it's very important that you approach this learning first just the movement of the shoulder without weights, seeing how it feels, just learning to use it. And you don't need to raise it like as high as you can. You can sort of leave it here, or you can let it slightly externally rotate. So there's different things that you can like approach these tight, weaker areas, immobile areas. We'll now go through some of the basic exercises, shoulder raises, even overhead press, and see the correct execution. So let's go. So we start with the lateral raises, and this first one is the wrong version, so I'm clearly struggling with my shoulders. And it doesn't have to be this pronounced, the shrugging. Only a small shrug will kind of ruin the exercise. So here you can see the correct version where only the shoulder moves, and I like to keep here the elbows bent. It helps to keep my shoulders more like internally rotated, and that's where I want to keep them. Here's the very basic cheating version done with dumbbells, where not only do we shrug, but we also hinge from the hips and very powerfully swing the dumbbells up. Here's another cheating version, this time sitting down, so there's no hip hinge, but now we once again very explosively shrug from the shoulders. Now the correct version, so very steady, controlled movement, raising from the shoulders. I keep a small pause at top, and I lower the weights instead of dropping them down. Now we move on to the front raises. So it's the exact same here, shrugging the shoulders, not really using much control, but more like swinging motion. And here's a version where I'm sitting down, one dumbbell at a time, using my body very strongly to swing the weight up. But this is the form that I see very often. So next, this is the strict version, so the correct version, and exact same as the strict lateral raise. Control up, control down. Try to really use the shoulder muscles and not anything else. Now we go to train the posterior deltoid. So you can see here that all the work is basically done by pulling the scapula back, retracting, using trapezius and the rhomboids, for example. And here in the strict version, we kind of lock the scapula behind, and you can see that we move the shoulder. We don't move the scapula, but we move the shoulder. This will very effectively target that rear deltoid. This one's a rear delt row, keeping the elbow bent. Keeping that elbow bent might help to actually activate the posterior shoulder, because you minimize the movement from the elbow. But this is of course the cheating version, and once again we pull with the scapula. So here's the correct version, and now I'm keeping the elbow steady, the whole body is steady, scapula is steady, and I'm just pulling my arm back. So you don't have to pull it all like completely to the side, you can pull it slightly back as well. Now we go to overhead pressing. So in this wrong version you can see I'm initiating the movement once again, shrugging my shoulder up, but at the same time there's no control at all, and I kind of snap it in the end. In the correct version I keep once again steady pace, and a very important factor is this end range of motion. I want to really squeeze with the muscle and not snap it there. You can also only work this end range of motion. I did this, for example, for my left shoulder, because I felt that the mobility was there quite bad, so I practiced only this end range. Here's the press with 2 dumbbells, and again this is quite actually controlled version, but I'm still shrugging very strongly, and I'm not fully really extending the arms overhead. Here I'm explosively pushing with the scapulas, my shoulders up, kind of jerking the weight. And now we have that strict version where I control the whole range of motion. So it's important to master this movement once again with control, because people tend to have problems with overhead pressing because of lack of mobility. We move on to the external rotation. So here's the one of the wrong versions, where I, instead of really rotating, I kind of pull my scapula once again back, using the trapezius a lot. And here's with the 2 arms. And then there's one more version which is wrong, which you might not see very often, but it's possible, which I'm basically using my scapulas to do the rotation completely. Now the correct version. So what happens here is nothing else moves, except the shoulder. Just like in all the other exercises, just rotate from the shoulder, using a lot of control, a lot of focus. Now we go to the external rotation when the arm is in flexion. And here once again, there's not just shoulder rotation, but the upper arm is moving a lot. Here I'm even pulling it to the side. So it doesn't have to really be like a strong movement. A little movement from the arm can really ruin the exercise completely. So this is the correct version, and you can see it's quite slow execution. I had a lot of trouble with this actually. Very bad control in this one. But we're now in the end of this video, so I hope you really kind of understood why isolation exercises can be really useful, and especially regarding the health and for the mobility for your shoulders. That's it, and I'll see you soon. Take care.